Hi, I'm Murray and welcome to the Nature-Based Solutions podcast. Today I'm here in Singapore with Flora Ji. Welcome, Flora.
Thank you, Murray. Thank you for having me.
It's very good to see you. So I'm going to give you a bit of an introduction as somebody who brings nearly 2 decades of global experience, most recently serving as the Vice President of Nature-Based Solutions at Shell. You've got expertise, I'd say deep expertise, you say expertise in the carbon markets, a little. You're very humble. Ecosystem restoration and the cross-sector partnerships that we require to scale climate solutions. And I know that you've played a leading role in developing and advancing nature-based carbon initiatives globally, working with governments, institutions and local partners to deliver the really high integrity projects that generate climate, nature and community benefits. I know you're passionate as well. You like that word. You're really passionate about building nature positive solutions that create lasting value for ecosystems and the communities that depend on them. And you've just fairly recently moved on from those 2 decades at Shell to Rubicon Carbon, where you're going to be leading, or you are leading, the firm's expansion across Asia and overseeing global asset management, helping to build and steward a portfolio of high quality projects. That's a really exciting move. Welcome to the podcast and thanks very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Maury, and welcome back to Singapore.
Thank you.
Really look forward to our discussion.
Well, it's great to be here. As I say, I'm just adjusting to the time zone. I woke up fairly early this morning, but not too horrendously. I've got some coffee on the go, and hopefully that's perking up my brain enough. But would just as a start, actually, it would be very, very useful if you could give an introduction to Rubicon Carbon at a high level and tell us about your company mission.
Yeah, that's great. So you're right. I recently joined Rubicon starting from March. And Rubicon Carbon is an integrated carbon platform in the market. Rubicon starts to really establish its own business model across the entire value chain, from early stage investment into project financing, into structuring solutions, and also offtake from projects and link these offtakes to corporate customers. And for the long tail part of the customers in the market, Rubicon also applied the financing industry's expertise to curate this type of portfolio, like similar to ETF type of analogy. It's called Rubicon Carbon Ton and Rubicon Rated Tons. And these are the products Rubicon also present to the, long tail customers in the market. And beyond that, Rubicon works on policy, on platform, on infrastructures. And all in all, the philosophy here is for carbon market to really scale up, it requires a jigsaw. And that jigsaw is about supply, demand, and financing. And we have to bring all of these elements together rather than working on simple silo activity. So that's why I feel the mission and vision aligns with my personal philosophy, and I'm here very committed to make it happen.
That's brilliant to hear. And I know that Rubicon Carbon Ton is innovative, right? So it's like an exchange traded fund, and it's a diversification of credits across project types, different vintages, and different geographies as well. So could you tell us a little bit more in detail how you actually go ahead and build that kind of portfolio? So I was saying to you actually when you came in, we've really refined what we do at Space Intelligence as support in the carbon market is a very simple process of screen, assess and monitor projects. So we help people, whether on the demand or on the supply side, to screen areas, assess individual projects, so due diligence, and then monitor them over time. Does your vision and the way that you operate, does it broadly follow that process?
Yeah.
And could you talk us through what each of those stages involves for you in practice?
Absolutely. I mean, as a disclosure, I'm new to Rubicon, so this product has already been in place for a year.
Okay, so you can't claim full credit for that.
I don't claim any credit of
Any
that,
credit,
but
okay.
I appreciate the concept behind this product. And I'm going to copy the 3 words you used because it's exactly the 3 words I put in written.
Okay.
So it's about screen, assess, and monitor. So first of all, for Rubicon Carbon, we screen, we look across the different project types, geographies, vintages, methodologies, and also carbon developers' profiles and track record. And on this basis, I think we are not simply looking for available credits or credits ready to issue, We are more looking for assets that we can stand up to scrutiny over time. And then it comes to assess. And for that assess, it is where Rubicon science and diligence capability led by Dr. Jennifer Jenkins' team really come in. So on this part, Jen's team evaluate all of the key elements around carbon credits, ranging from additionality, baseline credibility, leakage, permanence, durability, legal title considerations, and also the community dimensions, biodiversity impact. And beyond that is also about operational maturity of these projects. So Rubicon developed this framework called Rubicon Integrity Framework. It covers all of these fundamental elements in a way. So based on these integrity scores, we're going to literally high grade the projects and project carbon credits, which can literally meet this minimum threshold based on the integrity score. And within this pool, then you can select what type of credits you can bundle together into an ETF type of Rubicon Carbon tongue. But then an important part is also to actively monitor and manage this portfolio. If we look at ETF, in the financing sector, an ETF is really about selection, diversification, and also active management. And now it comes to the last part of the monitoring and management part. So we understand, appreciate a carbon project is not static. It actually evolves over time, and project can have new risks. A project can outperform or underperform, and the risks may change over time as well. There would be new risks, political, operational, economic, even policy. There could be continuous type of delivery evolution, and sometimes it's about local community, sometimes it's about some natural reversal type of risks. So with all of this, very active monitoring and management is absolutely needed. So then the Rubicon Carbon tongue can literally adjust this portfolio over time to make it more fit for purpose to the customers.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thanks very much. So you're trying to increase optionality for corporate buyers. That's what it says on your website. So could you say then, given that there are different risks in different projects and they evolve over time, could you say a bit more about how the diversification actually reduces risk in the portfolio? Will you have, for instance, like an IFM project in one part of the world partnered with ARR projects elsewhere, or is it not quite as simple as that?
I mean, first of all, diversification, they can address the concentration risk quite meaningfully, but I wouldn't say diversification is so magical to resolve all of the problems we have in the asset class. So in the carbon market, if you deliver across geographies, project types, methodologies, and vintages, you reduce the likelihood that one project type or one methodology type all in a sudden have certain critical issues that undermine your entire strategy. So from that perspective, I think a smart combination, well selected based on a threshold around that integrity, very much in line with ICBC and CCP principles anyway, would actually be a very strong basis to filter out all of the troublesome and, maybe less solid, less rigorous type of projects. But then when you come into this diversification, I would say the diversification will only work if your underlying assets are very solid and strong. And that itself is a big if today in the market. Of course, for the underlying assets, when a buyer look at this, they start with very rigorous due diligence. They then need to do active monitoring, portfolio management, and so on and so forth. But the fact is, in the carbon market today, I don't think there is any perfect project. So for that diversification itself, I call for caution. Diversification is needed, is critical, but it's not going to solve all of the problems. And I wouldn't overclaim the Rubicon Carbon Ton's magic diversification on that basis either.
So it's not going to eliminate risk, but within an asset class, it's reducing
right?
Yeah, it's minimizing the risk, but
indeed.
still within an asset class which has this risk associated with it. And I know that risk, a lot of the people I speak to on the demand side, risk, and particularly this term, have you heard it, front page risk? I've heard it a lot in the past year, that teams, you can get into like technical risk and so on for projects, operational risk. Like for a corporate, say, the real concern is that they make all of these efforts to compensate, mitigate their emissions by investing into these projects, creating offtake agreements, but then somebody somehow blows back and there's an article which frames everything in a bad light. So I hear very frequently is a concern about front page risk. You say that you do recognise that. So how do you define it? And do you think it's really a rational fear, or has it been overblown a bit by some sensational media in the past couple of years?
Yeah, so for me, it's more about what this is really about and why the audience read it and reacts to it, right? So I think for buyers, when a buyer chooses to purchase carbon credits, the action itself goes beyond the purchase activity. And they are actually making a public statement about climate action, and naturally also what they, worry about, especially from reputation and reputational exposure perspective, becomes very real. We have seen many projects over the past few years which literally faced integrity concerns, community disputes, or delivery failures. So for that front page risk, it's almost like it's a proxy for a broader question. And that question probably is, can the project withstand scrutiny? And to what extent? And is all of this scrutiny reasonable? I start with the last one, no. I mean, some of them are based on cherry-picked facts, even cherry-picked science without further validation. But the news, a coverage, a front page cover can literally jump the gun to overshoot and undermine fundamental efforts. That is not something to be proud of, and the market needs to be better to really judge and form their own assessment, what is right, what is wrong, what is acceptable, what is not. So that itself is an interesting phenomena we have all experienced over the past, but we haven't even reached to a conclusion yet. We may never be able to. But along the journey, what I observe is I think the market has matured significantly. So there are now serious buyers who, ask much better questions. They get much better equipped to literally demand stronger evidence. They also become more sophisticated about what good should look like. And these are all positive because I feel ultimately this is a much healthier dynamics for the market. Fundamentally, it's about the underlying assets performance, design philosophy, everything. And if we can make sure at the supply side, the project proponents, they know how to really do the good job in a solid way and present it with transparency, traceability, and trust. And now on the buyer side, the buyers are equally sophisticated, know how to form their own judgment, ask the right questions, fulfill their own diligence requirements, and also adjust their own risk appetite, tolerance, and risk score over time. That helps. So for me, we can never eliminate a potential front page risk. What we need to do is to manage that risk with sense, with a deep sense of rationale.
That's interesting. It's very positive that you say that people are becoming more sophisticated.
Yeah.
I mean, similarly, I speak to people on both the demand and the supply side.
And hesitant, unfortunately. They're sophisticated and hesitant.
And hesitant. That is a feature of the market, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But there definitely is more expertise out there and understanding of different methodologies, technical constraints, possibilities, and so on. But I suppose a question that many buyers have is whether there is a version of carbon credit purchasing, particularly in the nature-based space, that is essentially risk-free or front page proof. Or do you think, let's really take it from your last few answers, that really risk is just inherent in the voluntary carbon market? That is a feature of the products which are being offered. There is some level of risk associated. Is that right?
Absolutely right. I mean, my humble view is carbon projects, especially the nature-based carbon projects, has very very highly inherited risk. And some of these risks will never be able to be eliminated.
Yeah.
You can only find a way to identify, actively manage, and try your best to mitigate. But then when I look at such projects and also the desire to get a front page proof carbon credit, maybe the simple reality is there is no such thing of any proof.
Yep.
You can't really get a perfect project which is entirely risk-free, especially from reputation perspective. So then this becomes maybe a discussion more about what is the objective. I think the objective should be to build a claim that is well-funded, well-diligenced, well-documented, and actively managed. Actively monitored as well, and also recognize that along the journey there would be new risks and you will need to keep monitoring them. Risk is not scary. What is more scary is you neglect them, you let them escalate to unnecessary level without proper management.
Respond to the risks as they emerge.
Indeed. Everything in life has certain risk. Even when we two sit here chatting, who knows, maybe whatever can happen. There is always a risk, but it's more about risk awareness and risk management. And then for the media side and all of these reports about whatever happens in the project, my personal wish is when we read such news, we can all wear more practicality type of lens to look at them.
So do you think that the carbon market is held to an unusually high degree of scrutiny?
Yes and no. I mean, I start with the yes part. Maybe because carbon credits are invisible, intangible assets. You don't see them, you can't touch them, you can't measure them with a physical measure, and so on and so forth. From that perspective, people need to almost like rationalize this asset class in the mind and be able to explain to stakeholders, different kind of stakeholders with different level of understanding of carbon market and carbon credits, to form certain kind of conviction. This is an asset class that justifies all of the actions, the capital deployment, the good efforts from policy, local community, societal angles. So from that perspective, yes, I think scrutiny is needed. It keeps this asset class very solidly grounded. But then I also feel somehow because of many of these counterfactual elements in such intellectual discussions, people start to choose the either-or type of things rather than and embracive approach. Now we enter into debate about nature versus technology. We enter into debate about avoidance versus removal.
So always these false dichotomies. You have
Precisely.
you have to do all of these things.
Yes, and why? It's more because different group of stakeholders have fundamentally different cognition about what should be the main driver and main forces to tackle certain matter, such as climate, which is a very sophisticated matter. So from all of these elements, I somehow feel the scrutiny is a given, and it depends on where we sit, which market, which product line, which project type. Unfortunately, some groups will get more scrutiny than probably what they deserve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we okay, that's very comprehensive answer. Thank you. And another thought which I had actually whilst you were speaking, we're talking a lot about risk. We should also talk about reward, right? So if you get these, if you get these projects right, there is enormous benefit, right? So just over the water in Sumatra, there's projects which have been set up by Forest Carbon, for instance, to conserve and restore peatland and peatland forest. They conserve and restore biodiversity, support local communities. So yes, there's risk associated, but it's also the messy natural world is involved and local communities. If we get it right, there's huge benefit. So shouldn't lose sight of why this market exists and why you do have that passion for this
absolutely.
sector.
I had a philosophy before, and I shared this with a few reporters before, offline, right? I literally said, next time, before you publish article, maybe consider visiting a project and stay there for at least 2 weeks. It's not to prevent you from reporting the wrongdoings or imperfections, but what this can help you is to understand the local context, is to understand what application actually means in reality. Even the best science, even all of this beautiful technology incubated in a lab will require real life application to a business case. And here in the carbon market, many people are working very hard trying to convert and translate this science, climate science and carbon methodologies into real life practice to generate climate impact, to generate societal impact, biodiversity impact. We admit they're not perfect, they will never be perfect, but it's more about what is an integrity threshold for these projects. So if you try to find problems from whatever project, I guarantee you can always find a lot. But it's about that big picture. I'm not trying to defend, any of these underperforming projects. I personally have seen a lot before as well. I think they genuinely need to be better with more performance culture, with more delivery discipline, everything. But I'm saying that everything is about a more balanced view to examine, to assess, to allow them to evolve over time. Don't kill anything too early, but equally don't make the problem too big. So that's the fine balance we try to.
That's a wonderful way of framing it, because I think for all of us who have worked for a long time in this market, it's been deeply frustrating to see that the whole market was really tarnished by accusations which really related to a subset of projects, and a huge number of people around the world are greatly affected by that. So I'm glad to hear that you make those appeals to journalists to actually see what it's like in these projects and meet the people who are benefiting in remote rural communities from such projects.
And I do feel the journalists also had a very important work to do.
Yeah.
They keep the market honest, they keep the project honest. So I applaud to their work. Sometimes it's also about the audience and the buyers and the suppliers and also the investors, we need to all work together to make this market more robust, more sustainable, more durable.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And journalism is a key. Open, free, proactive journalism is a key feature of a well-functioning society.
Yeah, so I welcome their observation, criticism.
Yeah.
I think it keeps everybody honest.
But in the spirit of improving.
Exactly.
And
in
increasing
the, spirit
the likelihood of success of the market as well.
Yes, indeed.
So we went off on a slight but very useful tangent there. And you were talking previously about the importance of monitoring. And there was a key point that you said that the purpose of ongoing monitoring of a project in a portfolio is not just to monitor, it's to be able to understand the changes in that project and the changing risk, but then also to be able to respond to those risks. So could you tell us a bit more about what active monitoring of a live nature-based project actually looks like at Rubicon?
Yeah, so maybe if I take a step back, Maury, I somehow feel why we need to monitor a project, why we need to manage it after we already reached to investment decision and started to deploy capital. I think it's about the discipline to ensure the project continues to perform in line with your investment and delivery case, which you presented to your shareholders and to whoever deployed capital to support such activities. And only when the project roughly get in line with the investment premises, from the other perspective, would be better if it outperforms in a way, then you get more confidence to do more. Then the whole market can be scaled up, and such activities would not just be scattered activity in one very remote location. It can get to potential asset class, can drive that fundamental, materiality and sustainability in the space we all really, work very hard towards. So from that perspective, when it comes to active monitoring, I think it starts well before and beyond issuance. In the project, it depends on when you start to get involved in the project. If it is an early stage project, just literally around feasibility study, then it's almost like right after feasibility study, you form certain view how this project should be designed, developed, and delivered. There would be milestone identification to really implement such philosophy, such design. How many years will that take? How much capital will be required? How many resources will need to be deployed? These non-financial resources, including capability building, strengthening, establishment. So from that perspective, ideally, there would need to be a project milestone-based roadmap that lists down all of the different work streams and required activities and resources. And then we will literally look at this on a monthly basis to a very detailed level. In a reforestation project, it is about how much nursery has been put in place, how much has been distributed, to whom have we literally, geotagged all of these gardens. And then once the samplings are distributed, how many will be planted by which farmer group, survival rate, maintenance, cadence, and so on and so forth. It's a very tedious work, but if we zoom out from carbon market, carbon project, to the infrastructure world, to the energy projects before, these are just like embedded in the project DNA. It's called project management. So there is no real magic there.
Your base expectation is if you're developing a project like this, you just report on these KPIs for the project.
Yeah, and KPIs are not static, right? Along the journey, you will need to really examine such KPIs if they are still fit for purpose,
right.
And if you need to adjust them accordingly to reflect the local context, to reflect the project fundamentals, and so on and so forth. So this is also to make sure we keep a very practical lens to examine such projects. I'll give you an example, especially in nature-based projects. If, unfortunately, a regenerative agriculture project in a location just suffered from serious drought. And whatever your KPI defined 3 years ago, that may be less meaningful. Then you will have to work out a potential remediation plan with the project to make sure you don't penalize them for something they cannot control, right? You take a more practical lens to help them to pivot back to a project profile they can live with. So this is the type of thing I think active monitoring and active project management will need to deep dive into as well.
That's a very, very interesting lens. And I'm curious, does the onus of defining appropriate KPIs, does that fall on the Rubicon team, the project team, or is it a collaboration?
I think it's a collaboration. It has to be a collaboration. I mean, with full respect, not only just to the Rubicon team, but to all of these financiers in the market. We live in a city called London, Singapore, or New York. We try to visit projects from time to time, maybe every quarter, already a lot. We do not live and breathe in the local environment. We actually do not know all of these subtleties we will have to take into consideration in the project implementation. So from that perspective, I do feel respecting local context matter the most. You have to listen to the project counterparty, to the local communities, what this project actually means in this region and how to make it a success. But sometimes I do see project developers, they are also headquartered elsewhere, not in the project side, and that to me is a big problem.
Okay, so that would turn up as a bit of a amber flag for you if you weren't headquartered in the place where you're actually implementing.
Precisely. It's not a red flag, but it requires a very clear explanation and a very solid plan. How do you actually plan to really develop and implement this project if entire management team, if not everybody, but majority of the management team are not in the project or living in capital cities elsewhere?
Yeah.
Now I need to know who's going to genuinely take care of this.
Who's actually going to be on the ground, who's working with the local community.
Precisely, yeah.
And so on.
Yeah, and that's why very often we say local partnership is critical to the success.
Okay, brilliant. Well, obviously there's a huge amount of thought which is going into this process of choosing appropriate projects to work with. And one thing I have in my notes is that Carbon Pulse recently reported that due diligence timelines are now taking up to 9 months for the largest buyers. Is that consistent with what you've been seeing? And then,
kind of.
And then curious to know what's actually happening in that period of 9 months. Where's the time being spent? Where are the big bottlenecks?
So I zoom out from the Rubicon world for a while because I'm new to Rubicon. I genuinely cannot speak on behalf of the Rubicon clients, how much time they spend on due diligence. But if I just look at the market and tap to my own experience on this, carbon projects have risks across T-Corp range, similar to any other projects, from technical technology type of risk to economic, which links to the fundamental financing part very often, commercial structuring, operational guardrails, operational feasibility very often, and also importantly, carbon title, carbon rights, government policy framework. Unfortunately, in the carbon world, the maturity and I would say almost like the sophistication of each of these elements requires more time to deep dive into. In certain jurisdictions, even just carbon policy itself requires several months of work with the government to understand where they are.
Just in terms of like implementing regulations.
Precisely. Okay. What precisely is the carbon protocol? Who owns the carbon title? Where this benefit sharing will go to is not easy. And if you are in a community-based project, then it's about aggregation of many, many local farmers. Even that community program itself requires very deep dive type of due diligence. And you can well imagine all of these ground truthing type of discussions, questionnaire, sampling, and then deep dive focus group discussion, everything. And even methodology nowadays, not easy because of the recent methodological revisions, which is very much needed, but it does bring complexity, right? For a reforestation project converted to or going to apply the new VM47, the due diligence naturally would be around how will you define your dynamic baseline. Very few people have the answer today, unfortunately. And it's also about at least some concept about your MRV approach. And that itself is a big discussion.
Okay.
So all in all, I do feel the due diligence timeframe reflects the market reality. The carbon market today is in that kind of transitional phase. You try to go for the next level of scrutiny. You try to standardize something. You also try to improve the fundamental design in the field with the local people. So all of this requires fundamental understanding, appreciation, debate, and alignment. And because of that, I think time and effort is a given. But I do hope with new technologies like what you are doing at Space Intelligence, it can help people to accelerate this due diligence. A 9 months due diligence is okay, but it's not really helping the market to go for scalability.
Yeah, so it feels like it's still, market is trying to find its feet, driven by the scrutiny. So
yes.
You want to have only the highest quality projects, but that means
driven by that rigor, right? You want that rigor which you can stand up to and literally help you to really sustainably manage your future risk, including the reputational risk.
Yeah.
Then unfortunately, this is the price you pay today in the market. And people who didn't do very careful due diligence probably have already paid their price.
Yeah. So, and I think that's the lessons learned. And then thinking about the future, a lot of people that I meet on the buy side, they're thinking about developing their own in-house teams to be able to do some of this work, like to do technical diligence and monitoring and so on. But I think then the further you go into it, the more you realize that actually it's a very, very broad domain. You need quite a wide set of skills to be able to answer these questions. So Rubicon's obviously got a dedicated in-house science and diligence team, and most corporates, if they're thinking about it, they're only just at the beginning of their journey. So what's the actual cost, would you say, in terms of like time and talent for doing rigorous technical diligence in-house? Is it really feasible for somebody to, on the buy side, to be doing that rigorous due diligence in-house?
For some, it would be feasible, right? Especially those companies who have a relatively well-defined climate and decarbonization pathway. And some of them may even have a relatively large target. Then from that perspective, they need to take care and take control of all of these inflows, what they're going to buy, what they're going to invest. An in-house team, even if not a full team, an in-house team with some kind of capability to supervise, to examine, to assess is needed. Even if you outsource to lots of, consultant type of service providers in the market, you still need to form your view if this is something you can live with and present to the company's management team to make a final decision. So I do feel that critical capability makes sense to some of the large buyers in the market. But then do we need to replicate this to every single potential corporate buyer in the world? Maybe not, because for me, that's where institutional players need to come in and play a role. Some platforms will need to be able to literally do this work for a pool of customers, maybe the tail end pool of the customers. I call tail end not because they're not important, it's more because they have less defined climate pathway, They're still in the journey trying to figure it out, but they do have ad hoc demand. They do want to try to get involved early on without making it a huge equipped team internally, which becomes another problem later on. So from that perspective, institutional platforms will have a role to play. Their job is to provide an infrastructure for these type of buyers to tap onto. So they can literally outsource this to these platforms for detailed due diligence, and they can cross and compare. They can really form their view if this is roughly okay, and given their demand may be less defined, more ad hoc, it's more experimental type. So in the interim phase, that could be very helpful.
I guess that's your view of where the market is going in the immediate future, more of these buying coalitions. I know we should say that next week here in Singapore is Ecosperity, so leading sustainability week right here in Singapore. And I believe there's on the Tuesday there's the coalition for buyers. Do you see, is there that kind of sentiment here in Singapore to try and get people together and share some of the costs of securing credits?
Yeah, so I wouldn't spoil the announcement itself. I think Singapore government will take care of that. But from my perspective, I do feel in the carbon market today, we still need to have three things, as we discussed earlier. We need to have clear demand. We need to have practical financing pathways. We also need to have very solid underlying assets. I have seen this market rushed for speculative supply a few years ago. People with the similar passion as we do have, it's like this world needs more climate actions. Let's go for them. Really applaud to them, myself included, for doing that. But we did that without a clarity of future demand. What customers really want to buy, at what type of price, for what type of specifications. Many of these speculative supply were built with the fundamental wishful thinking. Once the projects get close to issuance, the customers will come with a deep pocket to buy the credits, and then you can distribute to the stakeholders, including the local communities. Everything would be fine. I would like to believe one day it will be fine. It will just work like that. But the market today is not like that. We see a stagnancy in retirement numbers, in customer demand. That's why we genuinely need to bring more customers to make firm commitment how much they will buy for the coming few years, to literally push this carbon market out of the winter, which has been a prolonged winter. We need spring, right? Because we genuinely believe the carbon market will contribute to the climate challenge we all face as human society. And then the financing part is also interesting. If you look at the numbers, there has been significant number pledged to be deployed into climate actions, and even just carbon market itself. We're talking about several dozens of billions. That's the type of magnitude of size we're talking about. But how much has been genuinely deployed? Very difficult. I've seen projects which literally went through capital raising, the fundraising, and they have to outreach to more than 100 financiers in the market, these capital providers in the market. If they're lucky enough, eventually they get one or two. If they're unlucky, they get none. And the project will literally just get stranded, cannot come in place with the type of, prosperity they hope to deliver. That's the reality in the market today. Why? Because demand, delivery, and financing are all run in silos. So that's what we try to do here in Asia, is to bring this into a jigsaw. It needs to be a very stable triangle, and hopefully this can be replicated over time. Convert demand to delivery. supported by
And
financing.
that's what it needs, because I'll be in Indonesia and I meet some fantastically well qualified project developers, and they're ready to go, and they need to have capital to develop the project. And then on the buy side, you'll meet people who say like we're ready to secure offtake agreements and so on, but we can't find high quality projects. It's like, well, the project developers are ready, but they need capital. The buyers will say they're ready, but they can't find the supply. So
Indeed.
it seems that Singapore is positioning itself and has positioned itself as really the global hub to bring all of these pieces together. So I'm very curious to get your thoughts on why Singapore has taken this position. And then we've talked a lot about risks and challenges in the market. I would like to leave on a positive note as well, and ask you what you find most exciting for 2026 and beyond. So your thoughts on Singapore, and then what makes you feel most excited.
Yeah, I think Singapore as a country has a very strong track record in the financing and trading industry. It has been able to really assemble the best talents to curate business models that serve the world. And when it comes to the carbon industry, the carbon market, I think Singapore is already doing a few things. It's trying to literally pilot a few potential business models, either the Singapore carbon tax, which opens to certain portion international carbon credits transaction under Article 6, or build up this carbon ecosystem here by assembling more people together to really set up a solid foundation from capability building perspective. Either this is MRV or even VVB type of conversation. They're all happening in Singapore. I think Singapore government, ecosystem, business world, even the public sector or family offices are all switched on to think about this very actively. That itself is a huge advantage. Is that collective wisdom we need. The second thing probably is more about action-driven, action-biased. I think Singapore has that DNA. When there is a good idea, they would like to assemble a group of people at least to give it a try. Initially, it may be small scale, but once the concept gets proved, then it can be replicated elsewhere beyond Singapore, because Singapore itself does not have a huge market demand, does not have physical assets. So this is more like, you can regard it almost like an incubation center. It's an incubator. We try to incubate business models, incubate potential policies, and then offer this to ASEAN countries, to the creation, to grow carbon markets, and so on and so forth, to jointly drive this market onwards. The other thing I would mention probably is more about Asia itself. Singapore being part of Asia, of course. When we look at the global emission, 60% above is in Asia. When we look at the world's supply chain, all of these big corporate supply chain, Apple, Google's, all of them, majority of them are still in Asia today. So if we say the whole world needs to go towards net zero, and big companies already pledged to net zero pathway, they have to decarbonize their supply chain as well. And it's here. It's in Asia. So that's why I feel the significance why I wanted to focus on Asia is because Asia has to be part of the solution. And I do believe the Asian culture, as a Chinese, I do believe the Asian culture being very pragmatic, being very diligent, be also risk tolerant. And I hope we can literally do a few things to drive the market forward, and the co-creation is one of them. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, you obviously have that very, very deep understanding of the market, but you do remain positive, and you're bringing all of this experience into the future. So, as a final question, then, what makes you most excited about 2026 and beyond in this fantastic region? So we've got Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia as your immediate neighbours here in Singapore, with incredible biodiversity and massive potential for conservation and restoration. and you're taking this leading role at Rubicon in building up the portfolio. So what makes you most excited in that combination of opportunities?
I have a fundamental belief, maybe I'm naive or something, but I have this belief ever since I was a child. When all of us are looking at the same anchor, we will get there one day. So what excites me the most in the carbon market, especially when I decided to stay in this market not long ago, all the people who reached out, they shared one philosophy, one belief, one conviction. They all believe the market will be here, will be bigger, and we will all make it happen together. Even when I speak to Indonesian government, Vietnam, Thailand, World Bank, UNEP, UNDP, you name it, everybody, no matter what type of challenges we're facing, we're going through, everybody literally, fundamentally hold that one conviction. We will do our best to make this market work. What else can be more beautiful than this? I feel very fortunate and very honored to be in a market whereby everybody's heart and mind is acting towards one objective. So then the everyday strugglings, difficulties, they actually make this journey more rewarding.
Hear, hear. Well,
Yeah.
I think the market has a much greater success of achieving that outcome with your drive and passion for it. So on that
And
note,
yours.
well, thank you very
Yes.
much. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule to come and speak. It's been a pleasure to go through those questions with you, and wish you the very, very best and every success with the new role at Rubicon.
Thank you so much, Maury. It has always been a pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And if you've been watching or listening to the podcast, thanks very much for joining.